The Salt Lake Chamber has their annual Business and Healthcare Summit, and the Salt Lake City Skyline will be seeing some changes. I'm Cameron Porter, and welcome to this week's episode of Venture Utah. We've got some great guests with us here today. Travis McKinnon with Auto Depot to enlighten all of us on what goes into buying a car. Joe Rangel, who will talk to us about the difference between self-critiquing and self-deprecating. And Jason Proulx, a master of gaming and collectibles. But before we get to that, I'd like to remind you to head to our Facebook page at Venture Utah TV and like and follow us to make sure you see new content each week, and to please share this content if you find it valuable. We can only help business owners if they see the content. So if you find value in it, help other entrepreneurs get the value as well. All right, so it's been a big week in the news, and we've got some really interesting things that have been going on. Salt Lake Chamber recently hosted their annual Business and Healthcare Summit, during which Katie Mahoney, an official from the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, gave her perspective on the current political climate of healthcare. She described the current climate surrounding healthcare as a we win, you lose environment, where it's far less about solutions and more about winning and losing. This probably isn't much of a surprise for most of us. The Medicare for All policies that several Democratic presidential candidates are running on are not widely supported, but at the same time, the GOP has yet to rally around a cohesive healthcare stance beyond just Obamacare is still bad. On a more local note, the Salt Lake City Skyline is going to look a little different in coming years. In addition to the 395-foot office building going up at 100 South and State Street, another high-rise is requesting the height cap of 375 feet be lifted at 200 South and State Street so they can build Kensington Tower, a 448-foot luxury residential project that would take the title of tallest building in Salt Lake City. Kensington Tower sounds pretty sweet, with a rooftop swimming pool, clubhouse, park, and sky lounge in what the Salt Lake Tribune describes as a unique vertical urban community. In addition to the penthouses on the top floors, they will also have luxury apartments, including luxury studio apartments, which seems like those things should be mutually exclusive, but that's probably why I'm not a real estate developer. Now, on to our first guest, Travis McKinnon with Auto Depot. Travis has been running Auto Depot. He's the owner-operator of Auto Depot, and he's going to give us a little bit of information about what goes into buying a used car. How you doing, Travis?
Good, how you going?
Good. Good. Thank you for being here.
You bet.
So, when did you start Auto Depot?
Back in the end of December of 2011.
Okay.
Yep.
What happened in 2011 that made you want to launch Auto Depot?
I've been in the auto industry since about 2001, and I've always operated under other dealers' licenses to be able to buy and sell cars to family and friends. And then it just made sense for us at that time to just get our own license and do it on our own. So we started out that way.
So what's different about Auto Depot?
Kind of what sets us apart is our mission, is because we try to save our buyers as much as possible on each vehicle that we find for them. Usually we can save people anywhere from 15 to 25% off NADA retail book value, you know. So we just go to bat for them. We try to help understand that we're on their side of the table on the deal, and that we're in their corner. We just work for them. So.
Gotcha. So could you walk me through that? I mean, we've all bought cars.
Sure.
But most of us, at least me, I don't really know what goes on behind the scenes.
Right.
So, you know, between a new car dealer, a used car dealer, just buying from somebody on KSL, what is the process of buying a car?
Well, my process mostly is once people have decided kind of what car they're looking for, I'll start looking through all the auctions locally and then all over the nation if I have to, you know, to find that car that they're looking for at that time, and one I can save them a lot of money on. So once I find that car, I'll text or email them pictures and say, hey, what do you think of this car? I can save this much in this car, and if they like it, then we collect a little deposit, and we buy that car at the auction. We either transport it in on a transport truck, or I fly out there and drive it back. And then we go through mechanically, cosmetically, make sure there's no issues or flaws with it, you know, and then just get ready for the buyer. So it's kind of a win-win process.
Okay, so you get all of your cars from auctions, and then you do a check on them, make sure that they're sound, and then get them to the customer.
Exactly.
So getting cars from auctions, is that a common way that dealerships get cars? Or?
Most used car dealerships are either getting their used cars from the auction, or a few come in off trade-ins, you know.
Oh, okay.
But if it's a used car dealer, they're they're 99% of the time getting it from the auction.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah, so-
Are there that many cars that get auctioned?
Oh yeah, yeah. There's tons. People have no idea, but there's thousands and thousands of cars every week here in Utah that run through the auction.
And what are these? Are they police auctions, like they've been repossessed, or what are?
No, just dealer auctions, mostly dealer auctions.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Where dealers have to, they're the ones that have access to those auctions.
Oh, I see. Okay, that makes sense. Okay, so the amount that you're able to save customers on your used cars, what is it that allows you to do that?
Just cutting out all the middlemen in the process, you know. When people go buy from the big shiny dealerships with a $4 or $5 million storefront, everyone that buys a car there pays a portion of that dealership's mortgage every month, you know. And so we don't have that. We operate very minimal overhead, so we can pass on huge savings to our buyers, and hopefully earn a customer for life, you know.
That makes sense.
So, yeah, we just cut all the middlemen, keep the overhead costs extremely low, so we can pass on those awesome savings to our friends and family.
Well, where it sounds like you personally fly out and drive the vehicle back in a lot of cases, it does sound like you're a pretty small operation. Yeah,
I mean, sometimes it just makes sense. You know, if I have to get a car transported from the East Coast, you know, that's going to cost me $1,500 to $2,000 on a transport truck, where I can fly out there one way, drive it back for $300 to $400. You know, I'm just able to save the customer that much more money on it. So
makes sense.
Yeah.
And at the same time, you get to tour the country.
Yeah, it gets old, but yeah. I've been in every state except for Alaska, New Hampshire, Vermont. Those are the only 4 states I haven't been in.
Oh my goodness. So can I ask you, which drive is the most boring?
Oh man, the ones that are over 2,000 miles.
Okay.
East Coast.
Just generally speaking,
yeah,
that long
East Coast, yep.
Gotcha.
Yep.
Fair enough. Okay.
And they hit you with a toll every, like a $10 toll every 40 or 50 miles on the East Coast as well.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh.
So
I've been to the East Coast, but I've never really driven around the East Coast. So
yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah, from basically Manhattan, New York, come across I-80, it's going to cost you about $85 to $95 in tolls until you get to Ohio. That's where the last toll is collected.
Holy cow. Okay, so I do have a question for you. This is a little bit of departure from just Auto Depot. This is more in general. Kelley Blue Book values. So are they accurate? Should you know, if you go to Kelley Blue Book, you get the value for your car. Is that what you should really expect to get for it if you try to sell it?
I never use Kelley Blue Book.
Okay.
I never use it because there's so many different like private party and different if it's a dealer sale or a private party sale, and the different conditions of the car. I mean, there can be 6 different values for that same car. You know, on Kelley, the banks go off of NADA.
NADA.
NADA. Yep. And so that's what I use as well.
Okay. What does NADA stand for?
National Auto Dealers Association.
Oh, okay. So they kind of have their own. They have their own set of.
NADA is kind of the trusted source for car values. You know.
Gotcha.
So
is that something that consumers have access to, where they can check the value?
Yeah, they can get online. Yep.
So as opposed to Kelley Blue Book, head to the NADA.
That's what I use because that's what the banks use.
Okay.
So
fair enough. That makes sense. And using that value, that should be a good indicator of what you should pay or what you could sell it for.
Yep.
Now I have another question. Trade-in values. For some reason, in my mind, I would expect to get more in trade-in value than actually hard cash if I'm going to a dealership and trading in the vehicle. My experience has been that the opposite is true. They'll actually give you less trade-in value than you could get for cash if you just sold it.
Yeah.
Why is that? Do you know?
Well, those dealers, they want your trade-in, you know, and because they're going to try to offer you the very least amount that you'll accept for that vehicle, so they can turn around the next day, add $3,000 on that sale price, and try to make a quick buck there, you know. So you can definitely, sometimes it takes a lot longer, but you can definitely get more if you sell those vehicles on a private party sell, you know, on the internet or KSL or whatever.
Gotcha.
Than you can get from trading into a dealership because they want to make their cut on it, you know.
Sure. So they kind of rely on the fact that it is more convenient to simply just trade it in and get the new car.
Exactly.
And, you know, therefore, you know, not take as much money from it because it's a more convenient process.
Yep.
Okay, that makes a lot of
That's
sense.
the thing. Yeah, I mean, sometimes it takes 3 to 6 months to sell that car on your own, especially if you're asking, you know, at the top of the value spectrum, you know, of that car, that vehicle. Or you can just go dump it and trade it off, and it's quick and easy, but you're gonna get a lot less that way. So.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So, talking about trade-ins. So, what advice do you usually have when people are starting to look for a car?
I just kind of get what type of vehicles they're looking for, and then I can make recommendations, you know, because across the board, I have a lot of experience with what cars are going to be awesome cars for customers, and what cars become problematic at certain stages of their lifespan, you know. And so I usually try to keep my cars that I find for people newer and lower mileage. Those ones I can save the most on. Plus, I know that I'm going to have problems with maintenance and headaches down the road. So, because I mean, there's cost of ownership in every vehicle you buy, and especially if it's over 100,000 miles, you can have a lot more maintenance. Just stuff that starts to break down, sensors and systems that start to fail, you have to replace. So, I try to keep my vehicles I recommend newer, lower mileage. But, you know, if that's someone's budget, that they're going to have to get the higher mileage car, I'll try to make a good recommendation for them that I know vehicles are going to run well and treat them well too. So.
Gotcha. And do you do mostly personal vehicles, or do you also do fleet vehicles, or?
Either or, you know, if I can help people out no matter what the vehicle is, you know, and save money and save them time and hassle that process. So it doesn't matter if it's got tires under it or an engine. I can save them a bunch of money.
So do you have a physical location?
Yeah.
And do you have cars inventory at all, or?
Yeah, I have a few. I'm mostly a car broker. I mostly find cars for people, but I've always got 8 or 10 cars, you know, for sale on KSL or whatever.
Oh,
and
cool.
yeah, I mean, I've got a body shop in Ogden off 12th Street.
Oh.
And then I've got several mechanic shops that I use too. So
cool.
I run it from my home office, again, to keep overhead at a minimum, so I can pass on those savings to my friends. So
For sure. That's fantastic. Yep. So if people want to get in touch with you to talk about a car for themselves and getting a new vehicle,
yep.
What would be the best way to reach you?
Just probably just give me a call, 801-645-5171, or message me on Facebook, and just let me know what they're looking for in their timeline, and if they're pre-approved, and I'll go to work for them.
Awesome. Sounds good. Well, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
This was a great conversation.
You bet. Thanks, man.
Our next guest is Joe Rangel with 2 Evolve Coaching. You all know Joe. He's a fantastic business and life coach. He calls himself a mindset coach. He owns 2 Evolve Coaching, and he'll be joining me on this segment. So you can come on over. Our conversation today, Joe, is something that I heard from actually a different coach that I actually disagreed with, and it may come down simply to definition of terms, and I guess we'll find that out today. But this coach was saying that you should remove all criticism, that you should not accept or give yourself any criticism because it's unproductive. Now, in my opinion, I feel like it is valuable to define what's wrong so that you can then fix it. What are your thoughts on this?
I think it's how you go about doing things. So I think if you're looking at critiquing to better yourself, I think it can be invaluable. In fact, I would probably say not think, but it is invaluable. I've been reading a book over again. I read it over and over. It's really cool, by David Goggins, called You Can't Hurt Me. Pretty amazing book on really perseverance. But he talks about in his book how every day he gets up and he looks in the mirror and he says, what's one thing that I can do to better myself today? And I think if we all have that mentality, that philosophy moving forward, then we can constantly be looking at becoming the best versions of ourselves. I think, a lot of times critiquing, I think people perceive it as a negative way of doing things, when in reality, if we're looking at ourselves going, how can I be better, that can be a positive. Now, if we're critiquing ourselves and comparing, and maybe that's where that starts to come from, then critiquing and comparison can start to live into a self-deprecating behavior, because then we'll start to kind of critique and compare against other people, if that makes sense.
That does make sense, and I think so. There's constructive criticism, there's destructive criticism, there's critiquing, there's deprecating. A lot of words that we use to describe, this phenomenon of basically singling out something that is wrong and voicing it.
And I tend to, you talked about me being a mindset coach. I tend to look at things of like, and not wrong, not right and wrong, but what could be improved upon. So instead of getting polarized or black and white about something, how can I do this better? Like if I have something in my life that I can do better, I don't beat myself up for doing it the way I did before. I go back and I look at how I could learn from that experience instead of reliving that experience, and then bring that forward into the future so I can be a better version of me starting today and the next day forward. Does
that makes sense? And I don't think I disagree with that.
Okay.
At all. I mean, it's really just a question of, in my mind, I feel it's a question of with what attitude are you looking at these things?
Totally. So I think if you go into it and you're looking at beating yourself up or looking at negativity or quote unquote, what did I do wrong? I think then that can become a negative behavior pattern. And a lot of times we'll repeat those, like I've talked about in the past. We can create those bad habits of beating ourselves up. When in reality, if we learn from experiences and then continue to move forward instead of beating ourselves up, like when you beat yourself up, does it feel good?
Of course not.
No, it feels terrible. A lot of times we can sit there and dwell on past mistakes and errors that we think we've made and kind of live there for a while before we actually make a shift. If you start to go, I can learn from everything that I do, whether it be day by day, week by week, moment by moment, then it can be really, really positive. I think I mentioned before, we have, to me, pretty simple choices to make every day. This is a good choice, or is a bad choice? Good choice is going to tend to lead you in the direction of your goals, your hopes, your dreams, things like that. Bad choice is going to tend to deter you from things like that in your life. And I think we get way caught up in kind of the negative earthly stuff. Even society today in the news, most of it's based on sensationalism and negative news instead of positive things, uplifting things. So I think if we can start to make our choices in that direction, none of us are perfect in the sense of worldly perfection. We're never going to be because we're trying to measure ourselves up against other people. But Einstein said the pursuit of perfection can lead to, excellence. So we can be the most very excellent version of ourselves by continuing to learn, to grow, to shift, to change. Every day, which doesn't mean we're changing something about ourselves as a person. It means we're changing the way that we think about things, the way that we kind of react and respond to things.
This is a more philosophical question, I suppose. Are there times when someone does need to change something about themselves as a person?
My belief, which would be an opinion, is no. I believe, and this is totally my belief system, that we're all born here perfect. And I think that we come to this planet and we learn fear. We learn how to react. We learn how to respond. We learn things instead of remembering the perfection that we are, the being that we are that has these incredible abilities. We start to learn things along the way. I remember when I was a kid, I don't know why I used to do this, but, well, it was fun. So I used to get out and climb out of my window, and then I would crawl up on the roof, and then I would walk off up and down the roof. And I thought it was really fun. That's when I was probably about 3 or 4.
Oh, wow.
Until one day, my mom came out and saw me on the roof, and she was like, "Get down, you're gonna fall." And all of a sudden I started teetering, and I actually almost fell. Because as soon as she said that, I started buying into that belief system. And I don't know if I've gotten up on a roof ever since that time.
Oh, wow.
But see, we can start to learn things like that. That's a pretty simple solution. I mean, it's a pretty simple situation. And to be honest with you, my mom was trying to protect me, right? But we can go through life and start to learn little things like that along the way that are limiting. So it's my belief that we come here in perfection, and then we learn fear-based stuff here on this planet, and I think it's inevitable that we learn that stuff. But then we also learn to persevere through that stuff, and as we learn to persevere through that, that brings out the very best in ourselves, kind of like the refiner's fire.
And I think a lot of that, it can come with development and age, the ability to add nuance. So I'm thinking about my 2-year-old, right? Well, the rule with my 2-year-old is don't hit. You don't hit. That is the rule. Now, my personal belief is there are situations which it is absolutely a good choice to hit. There are times when it is a good choice to hit. But for a 2-year-old, trying to, and trust me, I actually tried, they don't understand that nuance.
Right.
And they start to justify situations which are not good situations which hitting is a good choice. And so, yeah, when they get a little older, you get a little older and they understand, okay, adults I don't know versus adults I do know, one of them trying to pick me up and grab me, okay, that's okay to hit, you know, and the difference is there. And I think it's the same with learning the difference between self-critiquing and self-deprecating.
Yes, it's a negative spin,
Yeah.
you know, or understanding the difference between maybe positive and negative, and then learning to live that as you live your life. Can I beg to slightly differ with your opinion about hitting?
Sure.
Because I kind of agree with it, but then don't.
Okay, sure.
So think about when we were in high school.
Uh-huh.
Did you ever get in a fight?
I mean, I got in fights in school. I'm trying to remember if specifically the years 10 through 12 if I got
Doesn't matter.
physical fights.
Did one person get in trouble, or did both people get in trouble?
Both got in trouble.
So this again, and I tend to say things in phraseology of opinions because I don't think mine has to be yours, and we don't have to disagree. We can just have different opinions.
Sure.
My belief is we don't need to hit. My belief is that we can learn to step back and be more passive, and I don't mean like passive by bowing down. And I found myself putting myself in situations where if somebody were to come and try to hurt my family, as much as I would agree that it's better to take a step back, I probably would not behave that way if somebody were trying to hurt my family. I do think, though, in most instances, it's better to step back and see if you can gain some perspective, because like in that instance, when you hit somebody, it's usually a lose-lose situation, right? It doesn't create win-lose. We think it does in the moment until you're both in the principal's office getting in trouble for exactly the same thing, when in your mind, I'm sure as a child, you're like, well, I would not think you'd be an instigator. Perhaps you were.
Well, I was at least once.
I mean, but you know, you usually think you're right when you throw the hit. We get to that, and so that kind of goes back to a prior discussion about right and wrong battles. But yeah, so I think like I like to really teach peacefulness and, you know, non-aggression and things like that, and yet if let's say somebody like mortally hurt somebody in my family, I can't tell you that I wouldn't go after them. I can't, because I've not been in that situation before to feel pressed that, you know, that much.
Well, yeah, and I think, you know, there's obviously most of our decision making is emotional.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, the only real possible, and it could be that we're just using different words to describe the same thing, but I think we both agree that there is a line between when it is appropriate to respond with violence and when it is not. It's just where that line is, I think, maybe our point of disagreement there. And I think, you know, your example just now was more of an example of revenge as opposed to prevention.
Could be, yeah. I could see that too. So. I always love the line from Roadhouse. I don't know if you've ever seen the old Patrick Swayze movie, but he's a bouncer and everybody thinks he's supposed to be this huge guy, and he's actually a little guy. And they all want to fight. You know, all the bouncers that he's teaching want to fight. And they said, so what do we do if somebody does this? And he says, be nice. Well, what if they do this? Be nice. You know, and what happens at this? And he kept saying, be nice. And he goes, until when? And he goes, until it's time to not be nice. And I always thought that was a great way to kind of take a step back and kind of, it's almost like if somebody threw a punch. I got in a fight in high school, and I remember it vividly. And I had just got suspended for picking a fight. I was just back in school, and then this guy got mad at me for dating his girlfriend or something silly like that. And he came and picked a fight with me in front of, I was a trumpet player in the band room, had my trumpet in my hand, and he's like, I'm going to kick your butt. We'll use that word, that's more appropriate, but he used a different word. And I said, I'm not going to fight you. I just got back in school. And he proceeded to take a swing, and I'd dodge, and he threw a kick, and I'd move, and he ended up, you know, finally he tried to come around and grab me, and I just stepped back, and he knocked himself on the ground. And then I was able to walk away, because I mean, honestly, in that moment, I didn't want to get in more trouble.
And you had already humiliated him enough.
It was kind of fun. Yeah.
Well, kind of you know, really quick, just bringing it. I mean, this whole conversation kind of morphed into a conversation about nuance in general.
Yeah.
You know, understanding subtle distinctions, and I think it's the ability to understand that nuance and understand the relevance of that nuance that really is what enables people to correct their mindsets.
Correct.
To go from something to that's like a mostly correct principle that is mostly doing right to a truly correct principle that is going to lead them the right way 100%.
Yeah, see, the challenge is today, in today's day and age, there's opinions everywhere. People are constantly getting into battles because they think something's right or somebody else is wrong, and that's what I actually try to get people to do, is to take a step back and go, okay, can I shift the way I think about something? Can I allow somebody else to have their opinion? Or is this really something that's a true moral stance where somebody's going to get hurt if I don't take action? Yeah, I could agree with you on that. And then I can say that most of the time there are better ways. And usually at our ages, we get in more trouble when we hit somebody. So
we are pretty much the same age. So
I would think, no, you're a much younger person than me, I think.
Well, Joe, this has been a great conversation. I think it's valuable to have these discussions and to be retrospective and be meta about the way we think about our thinking.
Right.
And make sure that we're always working on improving that.
Yeah, I think if we can rise above constantly, we don't have to have disagreements, which by nature infers, a battle. We can have differences of opinion.
Absolutely.
And that's okay.
Well, thank you for this conversation. It's unfortunately all the time we have for today, but always a pleasure, Joe. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
All right, our next guest is Jason Proulx with Dark Prime Collectables and Gaming, here to talk about all things nerd, which I'm very excited for. Jason, thank you for being here.
Oh, not a problem. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so your store is actually right across the road, right?
Yes, it is.
So we're on State Street here. Robin Hood Studios is here on State Street in Clearfield, and you're just right across the street on State Street as well.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we've been there for 3 years now.
Really? Okay,
Yeah.
Sweet. So tell me a little bit about Dark Prime.
We started off in a small, actually we started off at the swap meet up in Riverdale Road. Grew from there after 3 years, 2 years there. Grew into a 500-foot location up in Roy, and every year we've almost every other year we've moved into a different, bigger location.
Nice.
Until now.
Okay, cool. So where does the name come from, Dark Prime?
I'm a Transformer nerd, so my favorite Transformers were always the bad guys. Like everybody liked Optimus Prime. I liked the evil version of Optimus Prime, which was Nemesis Prime.
Okay.
So.
Sweet. So what does Dark Prime do?
We specialize in childhood memories, the toys that we all grew up playing with, the games of nowadays, games of yesterdays, the Nintendos, Segas, Ataris that nobody ever wants to play. We try to make it a spot for everybody that wants to relive their childhood or show their kids that they don't have to break toys 2 seconds after buying it. Kind of thing. So we try to make it a wholesome family environment for people to come in and enjoy.
Okay, cool. So there's the collectible side. There's also the gaming side.
Yes.
What is the gaming side all about?
The gaming side is we have video game stuff. We have tabletop gaming stuff. Like Magic the Gathering, we just got approved to do pre-releases with. Actually, thanks to you.
Oh.
So we can do pre-releases for Magic the Gathering. We can do we can teach people how to play D&D and some other tabletop games that we know how to play. We also have play areas for people to come in, just sit, they're sitting at home one night bored and go, hey, let's play a game. We don't have room. Come over to my store and you can just bring in a game and sit and play a game, kind of thing. So we're also trying to work on getting a streaming side set up for streaming video games and tabletop gaming stuff for people and whatnot. We're also going to be setting up some videos for TVs for video gaming for the retro side.
Okay, so you mentioned a couple of different types of gaming
Yes.
there. So there's board games, but then there's tabletop games, which are different.
Yes, they are.
And then of course video games.
Yes.
Okay, so what is the difference between board games and tabletop games?
So board games are those that are played on actual boards like Monopoly, Risk, stuff like that, where tabletop games are actually played on the table. So like poker is considered a tabletop game.
Oh, okay.
Magic the Gathering, Yu-Gi-Oh, Pokemon, stuff like that you actually don't have anything but the cards in your hand or dice, stuff like that.
Oh, okay.
Can be considered tabletop gaming stuff.
So most card games probably qualify as tabletop games. Okay.
Most card games, most dice games, as long as they don't have a board to play on. So that way you can literally almost play them anywhere.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay, so there's board games, tabletop games, and now you're just starting to add some video gaming capabilities?
Yes, we're looking at, we have some TVs that we're trying to find space for right now to hook up. We like the retro feel of video games, so we're going with retro TVs. So we're going with the big console TVs instead of the
nice
instead of the plasmas or LCDs like this one here. We're going with the old actual consoles that people can play with and stuff like that, and the games. Once we get that going, it's going to be a rent time to play kind of thing. So people can come in, pay a price, and play and enjoy it, and just like and try to get a feel like you are in your mother's basement or grandmother's basement kind of thing when you're a child.
So you're going to get the old wallpaper and the shag carpet?
Don't know about the shag carpet because I'm not a big fan of those, but maybe the wallpaper.
Okay, is that how the tabletop and the board gaming works as well? They kind of rent the table for an hour?
Actually, the table is free to play. I mean, you can come in and play all you want. We just ask that there's no like outside food or drinks brought in. So if you want food, you can ask us if you want for stuff, because we do have food on premise. Or if you really don't want anything we have, you can ask us for permission to bring stuff in from outside the store. But we just really don't like it.
Okay, so it's like kind of like a movie theater. You have concessions that they can then buy.
Yeah.
Okay, that's really cool.
Yeah. We have like the microwavable stuff like you can buy at convenience stores. We have drinks, snacks, stuff like that. We're working on getting some other stuff in there, seeing what we can push before we have to go get the food handlers permits and everything else.
Oh yeah, that's true. That's a lot of headaches.
Yes.
So which would you say is a bigger part of your business? Is it the collectible side or the gaming side?
It's starting to be more the gaming side. The collectibles were really big. They still are. We're starting to focus more on the gaming side though, because we think the collectible side is where we need it to be for now. But yeah, the gaming side has definitely been selling more than the collectible side has, unless you count the video games as collectibles and gaming.
Oh yeah, like selling the cartridge.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
So so those already sell pretty well. So.
Okay. So is that the only way that you make money with gaming is through the concessions?
We do have like with Magic the Gathering, we have single cards and packs and stuff like that that people can buy from us.
Oh, okay.
We have booster boxes stuff and whatnot. We have we're working on getting sleeves, dice, mats, all kind and miniatures for D&D and the books and all that stuff. So
sweet. So for somebody who may be interested in doing more of like the I guess you'd call them tabletop games like Dungeons and Dragons and Magic the Gathering, what would be your advice as to like how do you dip your toe in the water to check the temperature?
I would recommend with D&D you can go to most gaming stores. They have a group set up usually that plays on weekends that is really welcoming, called Adventure League. They're usually willing to help out, teach and train you how to play the game, so you can see if you want to go out and spend the $50 on the player's handbook and $50 on this book and the $20 on this miniature and the $10 on dice kind of stuff. So I'd recommend doing something like that. You can also look online, see if it's something that you want to do. There's great streams on YouTube, just videos alone online everywhere for gameplay. For D&D, for Magic the Gathering, every game store, if they're a good one, has decks on hand to teach you how to play.
Oh, cool! So,
if it's a good gaming store, they will take the time out of their schedule to teach you how to play. And if they're not, you can go online to Wizards' website and download Magic Arena, and that will teach you how to play and stuff like that. But you don't get the interaction with a person and face-to-face kind of thing.
Sure.
So
okay, so shifting gears real quick, for what's some of the craziest stuff that you've been able to get to sell?
Craziest things, I get all kinds of stuff. Like right now, I have a custom-made, one-of-a-kind Game of Thrones lightsaber chair.
A Game of Thrones lightsaber chair?
Yes. A friend of mine custom-made it. He does stuff for the 501st fan group that does the charity events and stuff like that. He got bored one day, had 10 boxes of lightsabers, so he decided to make this chair.
So it's the Game of Thrones with the swords, but they're actually all lightsabers?
Yes.
Okay, that's crazy.
So that's some of the unique things. I'm able to get a hard to find unique game system called TurboGrafx. It's actually a credit card size cartridge based system.
Huh.
Very few people know about it and stuff like that. I've also gotten a couple other different gaming systems that are hard to find, rare. Old 1980s, 1970s Transformers and Star Wars toys, stuff like that. I had a carousel horse. Yeah, it was a wooden carousel horse that belonged to some country singer.
Really?
Yeah.
And they just had this?
She left it in a storage unit, and she never paid her bill. So a friend of mine bought it and goes, "Hey, do you want this?"
That's awesome. Which actually leads to my probably my last question, unfortunately. But how do you go about acquiring?
People usually bring it to me, call me up, message me on Facebook, and ask me what I take, what I don't take. I tell everybody the same thing. You have to bring it into me to be able to get and tell you values. But yeah, it's always people contacting me. I have people that go out and actually will go to other people's places, shops and yard sales and find stuff for me also, because they want the quick flips. While I'm not worried about the quick flip.
Sure.
So.
Well, that is awesome. That's really cool. So, what is the exact address of your location?
It's 354 South State Street, Clearfield, Utah.
Sweet. And what are your hours?
We're open noon to 8, Tuesday through Saturday.
Okay.
Thursdays we're there until about midnight.
Okay.
Playing Magic the Gathering.
That is awesome. Well, unfortunately that's all the time we have, but this was great. This was fantastic to learn about what you do.
Oh yeah.
Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, so thank you so much for joining us on this episode of Venture Utah. Just a quick reminder, if you'd like to be a guest on Venture Utah, it is 100% free, and you can do so by going to ventureutah.com and clicking on Become a Guest. I know, we made it very difficult, of course. So thanks again for everybody out there watching, and again, a reminder to like our Facebook page and share this content if you found it valuable. Thank you so much. We'll see you next week.